All right, folks, the good stuff. All right, talking about the yin yang. What is it? Why do we care? Should we care? Where does it come from? When did it come from? Let's start there, okay? Where did it come from? No one really knows. The fact is that it was a, pan-Chinese concept that was around and thought about for a really long time. And then the symbol popped up in far more recent history than the origins would suggest to us. Actually, a word on symbology real quick. It should be said that most of our contemporary or modern symbols are representational of concepts, traditions, or otherwise that really predate that visual, And so when we're talking about the yin yang, what we're talking about is something that first recorded presentation of was somewhere around Neo-Confucianism. But that said, we do have to keep in mind that there were Taoists thinking on the motion of energy being constant and represented in dualism for a very, very long time before that symbol popped up. All right, so the symbol itself is only representational of something that had been around for a long time. Now, as I understand it, eventually it comes to pass that the yin yang and the 5 elements become acceptable or official Taoist cosmology. So in my opinion, it's quite acceptable then to say that it is a Taoist symbol in origin. However, it's associative with Tai Chi, or the grand ultimate in Tai Chi Chuan as well. So you could see how if you start getting too into the historicity of it, you could begin to split hairs over what is arguably the least important element of this discussion as it pertains to what we're doing, right? So, respect that history because it's cool. We want to know about it. But let's get into the philosophical end of this, because I think that might be a little more applicable to our aim. If our business was energy, and sensing energy was where we were trying to go with this business, then the yin-yang could most accurately be described as a lens to see through without the eyes with which to perceive the evident and constant flow of energy and motion. All right? Now, after saying that, it should be obvious that this is where I have to depart from Google's insistence that this is a symbol depicting oppositional polarities or opposing forces. That becomes a little misleading, and I'm going to get into why. But, talking like that, you're eventually going to bump into, hey, doesn't this fly in the face of oneness? And I'd have to say, well, yeah, it kind of does when you're thinking of it that way, right? Okay? So, oppositional forces, not what I believe this symbol is about. And of course, everyone's entitled to disagree with me. However, best example I can give as to how I perceive this, all right? Let's think about handshake, all right? 2 hands come together, they shake. Now, you got 1 hand, 2 hand, right? They come together in cooperation in a very agreeable way to create this one thing, the handshake, right? Nobody thinks of a handshake as 2 separate things, right? It's handshake singular, it's one thing. And it is the cooperation in an agreeable way we're focusing on here, okay? And we're going to extrapolate that to how that works in terms of martial arts. But to continue, imagine now instead we've got 1 flimsy hand and we've got 1 real dominant, mean hand, and that mean hand is just manhandling the little fingers of that flimsy hand. Does it look like a handshake? Or instead do we perceive 2 separate things, right? In this, oppositional way. Okay? So there you go, right? The hand manhandling the little hand there, that's kind of the perception or the means of looking at this symbol as representational of these oppositional forces, which is misleading. It doesn't really convey the handshake, versus the 2 hands in cooperation in this agreeable way, right? And that, my friends, that's where we're trying to go with our comprehension of the yin yang. I must reiterate the takeaway here because it's really important to take away, and that is the bottom line, the lens that we are peering through, the yin yang. What we're trying to get to, all right, is a comprehension of the 2 agreeable, cooperative forces that comprise everything. You, me, anything we can look at, we can perceive through this lens, all right? And that's because everything is comprised of energy. End of story. So if we could start accepting that, and we could start grasping that, we could start seeing that, in ever expansive ways, now it becomes easier and easier to translate that to the offensive and defensive movements that we're learning in our martial practices like Tai Chi Chuan. Make no mistake about it, every single movement that you see in Jing Quan or any of the stuff I show you in these videos has offensive and defensive application. Now that's advanced stuff, so we're getting ahead of ourselves. This video, again, we're going to stay focused. Well, we're going to try to stay focused in every video, but I'm not going to lie, I'm not the best at that. That said, right now, we're going to focus on meditation. Okay, one moment. Before we move on to meditation, I really want to engage you guys in this, right? You know, the Karate Do masters, they used to have different methodology to teach their students principles, things of that nature. And they would do it by way of riddles, right? They would ask them questions that were extremely difficult to answer that may or may not have even have been relevant to what they were doing, because sometimes it was really just about kind of browbeating them, you know, telling them their answers didn't cut the cheese, so to speak. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that type of, I guess we call that negative reinforcement. Yeah, some traditions I'm not going to pretend like I think are cool. But I do agree that the riddle work, right, asking questions engages the mind in a way that, you know, is, well, more engaging than just watching me. So at that, I'm going to ask a question here that I would like you guys to answer down in the comments. And I will give my answer to the question in the next video. Now, there are no right or wrong answers to this, of course. So go wild, think on it, do, you know, whatever you want to do with it. But the question is, okay, what are the benefits of understanding duality as we've discussed here? Now, some of those I've just made, you know, really evident, and we've discussed in these explanations. Others, though, might be able to be surmised a little more succinctly than we've gone into in this video. So I look forward to hearing your answers, reading your answers, and talking about this next video. Okay. Meditation. We have arrived at a great note to explore, and explore we shall. What is meditation, and why or how is it relevant to Qigong and Tai Chi and the internal arts that we're studying? Okay. To answer the first query, I think it's important to note that there are a plethora of different types of meditation, right? Breathwork, mindfulness, guided meditation, so on and so forth, transcendental meditation. You could just keep going. The type of meditation we're concerned with, though, is maybe not surprisingly, moving meditation. However, okay, all of these types of meditation don't really help us answer the question at all, do they? Yet, if we look at all of these different types of meditation, do we not see some congruity? Can we not examine the overlap there to begin to understand it better? I certainly think so. From my vantage point, and I could be wrong, the way I see a similarity in all of those different types of meditation is essentially that they are all exhibitions of awareness or applications of our individuated consciousness in effort thereof. Working definition, it doesn't have to be yours. However, we could agree insofar as that, then I believe we could move on with the discussion to address seeing Qigong and meditation through that lens we were just talking about. And that, I believe, was why that conversation had to come first. Qigong, then, viewed through the lens we just articulated a comprehension of, can be looked at or broken down into two schools of cooperative thought when it comes to meditative Qigong, or meditation that is interested or concerned with the movement of energy. And that is generally believed or agreed upon to be meditation in stillness and meditation in movement, moving meditation. Okay, so moving on from there, if we are further concerned with developing the sensory perceptual reality of experiencing energy, right, that experiential experience that you're attempting to foster by gaining sensitivity to energy and expanding your comprehension thereof, then certainly we have to focus, in my opinion, most conducively on moving meditation. Why? Because if we're engaging in moving meditation, we are actively utilizing the body as an instrument that is taking part in that locomotion of energy. Finally, as an aside, let us address stillness and perhaps how that works cooperatively with movement, just for a moment, because we will explore this and talk about these types of things a lot more. But shall we say that we are looking at perhaps the shades of gray when it comes to stillness? And on that note, let's just be upfront about it. With Tai Chi, what we're learning to do is be more still while we're moving. Okay? I'll leave that at that because it is in depth. But suffice it to say, we have just gone over two very important requisite notes to moving toward the goal of sensing energy.